Hi, I'm Aaron Marcus, and welcome back to the Acting and Modeling Success Summit. We have Kevin Urban, who is the co-founder of the Savvy Actor, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about that later. He's also a professional actor, singer. He's been performing since the age of 5, and he's worked in theater, film, and commercials. So, Kevin, welcome to the summit.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Aaron. This is
Sure.
I'm looking forward.
Great. Now, yeah, and we were talking a little bit about this earlier. I truly believe that what you are going to be discussing here might be the most important pieces of information that people are going to learn over the next 2 days.
Yeah.
Because basically, what I believe is that if people really can't figure out who they are, what their type is, no matter how talented they are, they're probably not going to be auditioning for the right kinds of projects, which means they're probably not going to get work. And I know that's something that you specialize in. So would you tell us a little bit more about, figuring out your type?
Sure. Well, I mean, first and foremost, as actors, we are independent. We're owners of our own small business. And when you're in business, you have a product to sell. And most businesses that in the real world, right, apart from actors, like pretty much they know what their product is. As actors, what's interesting is we have this product that we think, we feel, and so ultimately with us as being actors, we don't have an opportunity to really experience our product externally, right? If I were to pull out my iPhone or what have you, like I can tell you all the features, all the benefits. I can tell you its strengths and I can tell you its weaknesses. And because we're actors and we want to do all sorts of things and we're trained to do all sorts of things, we always, we don't always want to pigeonhole ourselves. But that's one of the things that we have to do when we start to name our product, when we start to name what it is that we do. And it's also the hardest piece because it really comes down to allowing yourself to really let go of some things that you may like to do, but that there are other people who might be better at you, and you really focus in on your strengths. That's really what we're looking for.
Now, is that a decision that you make, or is that a decision you allow your manager or your agent? Is it a group discussion, or how do you go about figuring that out for yourself?
So I think the first thing is a lot of times what we do as actors is we give our power away. We give it to the agents, we give it to our teachers, we give it to our managers, we give it to everybody else, the casting director, the director. But ultimately, we're the ones who are driving our business, and we have to understand what it is that we bring to the table, and we have to understand what do we want. Because if we're not happy doing what other people are telling us what we should be doing, then there's something wrong, right? Because ultimately, we're in business following our passions, doing something that we love, and we have to be able to identify that. And it's up to us to really drive the bus. We want to find agents and managers and our coaches, people that understand what we bring to the table and understand our vision. So, yes, do I want agents helping you? Yes. Do I want your managers helping you? Yes. Do I want other people, your team of people helping you? Yeah. But first, what I really, really, really want people to do is to own, okay, that they're the decision maker. Ultimately, bottom line, the buck stops with them. That's what it does.
Yeah, and that's hard for people, especially when they're first getting started, because they feel like, well, I really don't have that much experience. I'm not really that knowledgeable. I mean, here's an agent, this is, a big person in the industry. They know better than me. And it's hard to stand up for yourself and just say, this is what I would like to do, especially if you're not even 100% sure what is right.
Right. Well, ultimately, it comes to doing research and figuring out, okay, how are you perceived in the world? How do people see you? How do you want to be perceived in the world? And finding that middle ground. Some people are lucky and they fall into what they do really well, and people see that and they book right away, whether it's when they're 18 or early on or after they graduate college or what have you. And then others, it takes time to figure out to really start to understand what they are, who they are, and develop that. Even myself, like I moved to New York for musical theater, and I love musical theater. one of the things that I always wanted to be was a tenor. I wanted to be someone that could, really most Broadway shows right now are written for tenors. And so I wanted to be a tenor. However, vocally, I couldn't sing the tenor roles that I wanted to play. I couldn't sing them 8 times a week. I was spending $500 a month on voice lessons. And if you think about that, what I was doing was I wasn't allotting and putting my money in the place that would get me farthest, fastest. And that's ultimately, when you understand what your product is, we can really take the time, focus your energy, focus your effort, and focus your money into the places that will help you get to where you want to go faster. I had to ultimately understand that as my dream of becoming a tenor, I had to let that go. I had to understand that, I have my own unique talents. And I had to go, this is my set of skills. And I had to become aware of that and go, okay, you know what? Singing for me right now is a hobby. And then I started to realize that I'm spending $500 a month on a hobby. And I could take that money and go allot it somewhere else that would help me achieve my other acting goals as well. Because I want to do it all.
So basically, let's say, somebody's getting started and they are trying to figure out, who they are or how they are. I guess what's really more important is how they are perceived in the world, which, might be very different. So would a good exercise be to walk over to people that, probably not strangers walking down the street, but maybe if you're, at a networking event or you're at a party and, and you might say, I know this might sound a little bit odd, but I'm trying to figure out how people are viewing me in this world. Do you have any suggestions, any adjectives? Do you see me as certain characters? Do you see any roles that are right for me? Is that something that you would suggest people do?
Absolutely. The more research you have, the more you understand how you're perceived in the room. We all have different things about us. Even our facial structure can tell things to other people. That I have a frown in my resting face. When I'm just sitting here, and I can be happy I can be happy. I can be whatever. But my frown turns upside down, and so there are times when people think that I'm upset or I'm angry with them, just because my face is resting.
Well, go ahead.
So what I need to do is to remember, even today, to warm up, to just activate a little bit here, the musculature, so that I don't look like I'm just sitting here because that's my resting face.
Hey, you know what? Maybe we could even play with that exercise right here. You're able to see me on your monitor, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you. So I'm just walking into the room. I'm kind of curious. How would you view me? What kind of roles do you think would be right for me to go after? And just to throw it out there, probably not the hitman for some mob. That's probably not a good one for me. That one I know. Any other thoughts besides that?
Okay, so with you, right? You're thin. There's a little nebbish quality. Now here's the thing. The work that we do is personal. I just want to, before I start to throw things out here, I work intuitively, and I literally just say first thing that comes to mind. Because there is no right or wrong necessarily, but you're going to find agreement across the boards with certain things that people say. You come across to me as Mr. Drummond from Different Strokes. That's the first thing that that I see just looking at you online. And then the other thing that I see is the father from Alf. And for some reason, I can't think of his name off the head.
Yeah, I know who you mean.
And maybe you get him. I don't know if you've gotten him in the past. But you're thin, and I would assume that you're also, by the way that by just looking at you and by the way of your neck, that you're maybe a little more lanky and tall. Maybe I can just see you from here. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I have all of these assumptions. Then I'm also looking. Your hair looks blonde right here, but I'm assuming that it's more of a gray. Is that right? What's your?
It's like brownish, grayish. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So all of a sudden, I start to take a look at, okay, what are the? I see accountant. I see nebbish comes to mind, although it doesn't mean that I think you're nebbish. But there's something about that there's this quality. I would think that you're a little conservative, although when I look in the back of your, in what's behind you.
Well, see, that's not fair because you really should be. But the reason why I mentioned that, it's interesting because even like when I'm doing workshops and I'm asking people to describe other people in the room, and it's in some ways kind of a similar exercise. I always tell them disregard the wardrobe, because that can really throw you off. In the same way, certainly there are things in this room that would give you very clear indications as to how I might, kind of live my life. But when I go into a casting director's office, those things aren't brought in. So so don't use those things. Just kind of look at me. I'm kind of curious. So far, actually, I agree with everything that you're saying. But I think and I'm not doing this just so I can get analyzed here. I think it's really helpful for people to see what this process is. And also, I realize, through the Savvy Actor, when you're working with people individually, it's a very different kind of experience. You're sitting down, you're talking with them, you can really look in their eyes much more carefully, you can see their body language, which gives you so much more information than, looking on a monitor here. But still, I think we can keep going. I think it would be interesting for people.
So here's the thing. I'm already seeing your structure, right? So I do I have clients that I work with via Skype, and when we first started Skyping, I was like, oh, I don't know if this is going to really work. Because I do like to see how the person enters the room. I do like to see these pieces. But if you're booking film and TV, this is the only way we're going to see you. So, but however, even right now, you can tell, now my shoulders are back, then my shoulders are hunched. Yours are up a little bit, so there's a little, it looks like there's a little tension here, but it could be the way that your arm is resting on the chair.
Oh, just a deformity. It's like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. I can't help it.
No, but it's like your shoulders are square. So then we start to go, okay, well, square. I start to think of what other things are square about you, which goes back to the accountant, which goes back to, do you know what I'm saying? So there are all these pieces, and then all of a sudden I start to take a look and I start to go, okay, here's the other piece. I start to think Felix Unger a little bit. I start to think, now all of a sudden, how can I forget this famous actor's name?
Alan Alda?
No, but I do see Alan Alda. Oh, yeah, Tower Heist. So you get Alan Alda quite a bit, don't you?
The younger version of Alan Alda. Yeah.
But there's more warmth to you, actually, I think. There's a great
I agree.
to you. And so there's something to that. I'm trying to think of other characters that.
Well, and besides that, so do you start thinking of, okay, so what kind of roles do you, would you see somebody begin to audition for?
Absolutely.
Is that a direction that you would go in also?
Well, absolutely. Well, first I have to get you in agreement with this. Okay, that's the first piece of the puzzle, because some people perceive themselves differently than they are in the world. Okay, one of my clients, it's very funny because she took our weekend, she got all this great information, and she was disappointed because nobody said that she was funny. Nobody. She's like, but Kevin, I'm funny. I was like, okay, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen your comedy. Because how she is in the room in front of people is not how she is when she's super comfortable. And all of her friends that she had talked about, they were all like, you're so funny, you're all full of life, you're this, you're that. And when she got in the room, when the pressure was on, when whatever happened, she lost that. So our work was to find the compromise. Because she's like, Kevin, I'm funny. I'm like, yeah, but you don't sell funny. You just don't sell it. So over a course of several weeks, what I do, this process takes 3 to 6 months to implement. I was just teaching, teaching a class at New York Film Academy, and I've been working with these students for the last 6 weeks. And this information, one of my students today, tears, just tears, because she's understanding and awakening to who she is. But there's still in the back of her head going all the limitations that are there that have been put upon her by everybody else. And ultimately, we have to shed some of that so that we're not, because we're our own biggest critics. And if we're in the room and we're constantly talking to ourselves in our mind, that's not helpful either. That's why if you understand, if we're in agreement that, you know what, you play nebbish characters, that you play maybe a little more conservative, then we go, okay, great. I start to see you maybe, in the past on a West Wing type of thing, or I see you as maybe in a boardroom, but you're going to be the more conservative potential. Could you play not conservative? Sure. Like I could see in the background, like there's some other pieces to your brain, right? My brain's a little bit messy, but that's what allows me to connect the dots. Okay, it's understanding and being okay with that. But that's what makes me me. There was a long time when I wish that I was more classically trained, that I could just stand here and be super still, and I've learned some of that, but that's not my innate piece. That's not innately who I am. I can.
Yeah, and I mean, I was just going to say, I mean, all the things that you're saying are absolutely true. It does, typically I'm going to get sent out to audition for, could be the accountant, could be the science teacher, could be the doctor. I get a lot of doctor stuff, lawyer, politician.
Professor. I would love to see you as a professor.
Oh, absolutely. But one of the things that, and not to say that I can't do the very conservative, hard edge kind of role, but quite often, especially because of my headshot, and this is where I think my strength really lies, there's a warmth. Even if I'm conservative, I have compassion. And so I am the therapist. I'm the psychiatrist. I'm the pediatrician. I'm the guy that you like, the guy who you will share information with, somebody that you trust. And the interesting thing is, I mean, that's typically, those are the areas that I work in. It's funny, you happen to mention West Wing, and I did work on West Wing. And when I was on The Wire, I was a state's attorney. And then and this is the crazy thing about this industry, out of the clear blue, I was auditioning for America's Most Wanted, and the director was there, and he said, "Hey, look, would you also audition for another role while you're here?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And he gave me the sides, and it was for the manager of a strip club. And I was floored. I was absolutely floored, and I really had no understanding of what he saw in me that made, I mean, I'm thinking, the manager, kind of like a bouncer. I could be the accountant for the strip club, but for the manager. And as it turns out, I booked it, and with the right wardrobe and the hair slicked back and the right attitude, telling the girls, "Hey, take 5, you're ready to go on in a couple minutes," and it worked. But that's really unusual, and everything that you're saying was 100% right on with. That is my look, that is my strength, and it doesn't mean that somebody can't do other things, but what I find is...
I just wanted to ask you, did you have a relationship with that casting director or that director beforehand?
No.
Prior? You didn't?
No, I didn't, and that's what... Well, the casting director, yes, not the director.
Okay.
But I was really floored by that, and I guess that's... I guess the whole thing is I know that as an actor, we mostly talk about we don't want to be pigeonholed into things, but the fact of the matter is our physical body, I know there's a certain essence that we bring into a casting room, and not to say that you can't do other things, but to try to play against your physical type, I'm not saying it's impossible, but if you're not a star and people aren't going to, see the movie anyway, it's very difficult to play against type. And personally, I'm fine if people want to pigeonhole me, because that means I'm working. And like you were saying, you have to know what your strength is. And to me, I mean, I think that's, so much a part of having success is, number one, knowing who you are and what you do well and how people perceive you.
Yeah. A couple things. Now, you heard conservative, which was very interesting, and you heard that you weren't empathetic. When I said the word conservative, you assumed that I didn't think empathetic. Now, this is our own language, right? Conservative does not mean not empathetic. In our society today, but this is where the misconception comes in. this is where the ownership, you might not understand why somebody might cast you somewhere. You might not understand what somebody gives you in terms of an adjective. But our own personal interpretation of that also helps to shape that as well, which is why we want to see what the commonality is when people give us adjectives. Because one of the first things that I said to you is that there's warmth there. So, when we start to go, okay, well, what is this thing? Now, here's the other interesting thing. With your hair slicked back, now you're also thin, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So with your hair slicked back, and I don't want to make a general assumption, but sometimes we have to make assumptions. With you, because you're thin, and I'm thinking, are you lanky or wiry, or am I off on that?
No, I'm there like 6 feet tall and, like 160 pounds, and with a black leather jacket, I looked right for the part.
Absolutely, but here's the other thing, right? You've also got, because you're thin, right, a lot of metabolism and coke, right, in strip clubs, can also give this other thing that goes on that you start to think of how the body reacts. That's
an interesting thing. Not a very healthy lifestyle.
It's what I'm saying, and not saying that you're not healthy, but again, there are all these pieces where people could see that. Now, the casting director that you knew in this piece could also have said, you know what? I've seen Aaron, and I've seen him do some things, and you might want to check him out as a strip club owner. You may not see it right away, but he's good. And let's try him at this. I think you might be surprised. One of our PACE universities, we also teach. We have a 14-week curriculum that is taught at PACE University, and one of our very first students was Jerry Brown, and Jerry Brown was I think she was 20 at the time or something like that, and Jerry Brown looks at me. We're teaching, and all of a sudden she goes, "I get it. You have to embrace your brand to break your brand." So people need to get to know that you're consistent doing one thing, and once they know that you're consistent, then they'll start to change. They might see something that's funny, or they might see this other aspect of you, and they're going, you know what, let me save that in the back of my head because I know it'll be useful at some point. And then they'll start to take a chance on you in other roles to bring you in, because then they're starting to get to be creative. The casting directors want to be creative too. They want to bring you in, but first you have to gain your trust.
That's a great point. Hey, Kevin, I want to wind this up only because there are actually, I'm taking a look here, there are a bunch of questions that have come in. I want to make sure we have some time for some questions. Awesome. So let me take a peek here, and we have a question from Lisa in West Virginia. How can I show my type in a headshot?
Okay. So that's a loaded question.
Well, the first thing is she's absolutely right, because you really should. I mean, you should be however you're going to be presenting yourself to the world. That's what should be seen in the headshot.
So, as human beings, we are capable of a lot of different things. Correct? We're capable of tremendous anger. We're capable of tremendous compassion. I like to say that we're three-dimensional. And in our work at Savvy, we really look to identify 3 dimensions that really encapsulate you in terms of who is this person. And in a headshot, I want to be able to, in writing or in talking or in pitching, I want to be able to capture these 3 different things, these 3 different pieces. What happens a lot of times is we shoot for mood in headshots. The lighting's dark. We trust the headshot photographer. We're in a black leather jacket. Maybe we don't even sell that. We don't sell that. But all of a sudden, we're playing this mood. But that only shows one dimension. And ultimately, what I want to, if you're a bright person, if you're bubbly, if you're fun and spontaneous, you know what? Probably I want you in a well-lit room with good lighting. And then I want you going through a whole different range of emotions, because the cool thing is, Aaron, when we first started in business as actors, everything was done by film. So we really didn't know what was going on. We had to trust the photographer. But now we can see exactly what the photographer is shooting, and we can start to see, okay, does this work? How does this how does my clothing, how does this look, how does the lighting look? We are our own artistic directors on the set. So it's important for us to understand what we want to capture, be able to talk about that with our photographer, and then also be able to work in collaboration with our headshot photographer, and ultimately understand the characters and the stories that you are going to play. And that comes down to branding. Who are you? What are you going to play? And then we can start to encapsulate that. It's so interesting because a lot of times, and I would tell you, there are 3 different types of headshots out there. There's the shot that your mother likes. There's the shot that your significant other likes. And it's also probably the shot that you like as well because it's your hot shot. It's the one where you look really good. And then there's the shot that sells you. And I want to find the shot that sells you. And so ultimately, if we can define the 3-dimensionality for you, okay, we do this through a lot of different ways and exercises, part of which you just saw with Aaron. And we do this actually in groups as well in our weekend. So you're getting feedback from a lot of different people. Because ultimately, it's not just how I perceive Aaron today. It's about how you perceive Aaron and how others perceive Aaron. And then we come and we find that middle ground where 75% of the people see this. And there's agreement. That's the important piece. We're looking for that agreement. And then we can capture that into a headshot. And that's the ultimate thing. Yep.
Hey, Kevin, I'm just going to try to squeeze one more in like 45 seconds here. This is from Nell in Australia. Do you find that certain types get more work than others?
Interesting.
That's a great question.
It's a fantastic question. Okay. There are times when, certain people are going to work right away, especially if they're new to the acting world, and then there are certain people and they're young, and then there are certain times when people will work when they're older. Has a lot of things. It has a lot of things to do with what is society, what are they filming right now, what are the trends in terms of the industry, in terms of the stories that are being told. However, I will say that from my vantage point, one of the things that reality TV has done has opened up our society to all different shapes, all different sizes, all different ethnicities being on TV. I mean, I love watching Biggest Loser, and we're watching 300 and 400-pound people losing weight and rooting for them. And that's never happened. That really hasn't happened on a mass scale before. So, yes, are there certain types that will work more often than others? You know what? There are. However, there's also going to be more of those types as well. So it's important for you to identify your niche. And when you identify your niche, what you're going to be able to do is get yourself in position to be hired by the people who are telling the stories that you tell. And that's
fantastic.
really what it comes down to.
Hey, Kevin, first of all, I just want to thank you so much. For people who want to learn more about The Savvy Actor and you, how would they reach you?
Great. You can go to our website. It's www.thesavvyactor.com. It's SAVV, 2 V's, Y, actor.com. You can also email jk@thesavvyactor.com. We do a Crash Course MBA weekend that's 17 and a half hours of business immersion where we do branding, we do marketing, we do sales. We go into all of this stuff and show you how to incorporate all of this into a business plan.
Fantastic.
Once you define your product, boom, you're done. So yeah, and we also do one-on-one coaching, as you can see.
Great.
And I work just like we did tonight. So thank you.
Hey, well, thank you so much. For anybody who does have any additional questions, and I'm sorry we couldn't get to more, I'm going to be sticking around at the very end of the day, and I will get through as many questions as I possibly can. So thank you so much again, and I look forward to talking with you soon.
Thanks, Aaron.